Good morning, everybody. If you've been in the waiting room, we've just started letting everybody in. We've got about 120 people signed up for this webinar today. So we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to get through the doorway, and then we'll convene the meeting. And thank you all for being here.
Okay, we're holding steady at 83, so we could probably begin with our roll call.
Okay, let's officially convene this meeting of the Oregon Housing Stability Council. It is Friday, April 7th. It is Friday, April 7th, 2023, and we're going to start off with the roll call of the membership.
Thank you, Chair Hall. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Present.
Councilmember Farrell.
Present.
Chair Hall.
Present.
For the record, Councilmember Lee will not be joining us today, and Councilmember Mena will be joining late. Councilmember Rogers.
Present.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Present.
Thank you. All is accounted for.
Right, first up on the agenda is public comment. And I want to remind everybody that public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person, and that we take comment from folks who have signed up in advance in the order in which they signed up. After we work through this list, we'll open the floor to see if there's anybody who hadn't signed up who also wants to offer public comment. And first on the list today is Shelley Cullen.
I apologize for any confusion. I asked for my name to be withdrawn. I'll speak at a later date, so apologize for the confusion.
Okay, no problem. Rick Solon? Is Rick online?
Yep, go
Hello,
ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning, Chair Hall and members of the committee. I return to speak for the Milepost 5 Tenant Council and the Milepost 5 residents. We are not making a lot of progress as far as, raising the level of housing at Milepost 5. We still are having problems with lack of security, with lack of facility, with, to be blunt, human waste being left in places, and not being promptly cleaned up. We've asked for an open audit of the background check because of criminal activity among various members of the community and tenants, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of progress being made. They are working on getting some security cameras in, but it seems like they aren't being used effectively. We aren't seeing a lot of progress made, and it is getting extremely frustrating to keep coming back here month after month and speaking to what, as far as we're aware, is the regulatory body that should be enforcing these rules, and we don't see any activity happening. And so we are again asking that serious steps be taken to enforce the rules and, force building ownership and building management to make significant investment in this property and move this process forward.
Thank you. And next on the list is Neil Whitaker.
Respected members of the council, I'm going to kind of piggyback on some of the issues that Rick raised. I'm going to be speaking about some violence that occurred here directly connected to the lack of background screenings at this LIHTC property, the studios. So it was fall of 2021 and Guardian moved in one of the documented felons I've been discussing for, we're getting close to a year now. And we are at over a year, Studios Unit 214, and placing him on a lease. And I'm going to read a list of his open charges and convictions at the time of move-in. He had a conviction for theft in the third from 2019. He had 3 open misdemeanor charges, a reckless driving, a menacing, and a harassment. He had an open felony for fleeing or attempting to elude police from 2020, and he had an open felony for unlawful use of a weapon in 2021. This ineligible felon's violent impact on one trans woman's living experience here is what sparked that second federal lawsuit regarding conditions on the property. And this would be the Gibson versus CDP. So I think it's useful to look at an analysis of this lawsuit posted on CaseMine, because this knife carrying individual she describes is this same exact ineligible felon and Studios tenant Jameer Ramsey Olive. The plaintiff in this case, she was never made aware that he had this criminal record. And she was granted no counsel for some strange reason to help her with research. She had no resources. She was living in fear alongside felons with a bedbug infestation to add to that. And this felon terrorized this woman repeatedly. And this violence was preventable at really multiple points in our timeline here. And the larger issue, tenants should really not have to worry that a multi-state felon is a wall thickness, an uninsulated 1932 wall thickness away from them using the same bathroom at night. Allegedly, Screeners Inc. had screened all tenants to Guardian's TSP, so we're really curious how this keeps happening. Prior to some of the violence, there was a long string of emails in the months before warning Guardian about his erratic behavior, including a police report that was sent to Guardian on January 20th, when he uttered verbal death threats to the school teachers who lived directly across the street. On January 21st, Guardian was sent an email with his vehicle plate number, a photo of his vehicle, that he lived in the north end of the building, and the quote in that email is, "The situation with this individual is rapidly escalating, and it is possible that someone will get hurt or killed. Please let us know what actions you will be taking to remove this violent individual from your property. He is an immediate safety threat and absolutely should not have access to your property," end quote. So let's jump forward all the way to March 14th. Guardian finally has to respond to OHCS about this, and they do it in this manner. The only large police response that I'm aware of was on March 4th, 22, involving a resident threatening another resident, which resulted in this resident being arrested. In addition, we are on the eviction process with this resident. Again, on 3/14 early morning hours, this same resident caused additional police response, also threatening behaviors, end quote.
Neil, unfortunately, we're at 3 minutes. Could you wrap up your thoughts?
Yes. OHCS needs to facilitate a full, independent, transparent audit of all criminal background screenings at the studios since CDP purchased the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Jonathan, is it Trutt? Trutt?
Fuck.
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please. Hello?
Sorry, I got muted again. Okay, now.
Oh,
you should
okay.
hear me. Thank you, Chair and council members. My name is Jonathan Trutt. I'm the Director of Development at Home Forward. We're the housing authority for Multnomah County. We have a housing portfolio of about 7,000 affordable apartments and administer the Section 8 program for roughly 8,000 households. Altogether, we provide affordable housing and services to about 30,000 Multnomah County residents. And I'm here today to talk about the preservation NOFA, which is on the agenda for a little bit later. I want to start off by thanking the department. There was lots about that NOFA that was laudable. And I really want to thank the department for listening. There was a series of sessions about that funding, and there were two things about the NOFA that were novel for preservation projects. One was the ability to use the funds to redevelop existing units. And then the second was the department's intentional effort to pair preservation resources and new construction resources to be able to take advantage of upzoning that's happened around the state and especially in the Portland region. I want to lay my cards on the table. I was an unsuccessful applicant for the funds. I've been unsuccessful many times before with competitive funding rounds. I've been at this for 18 years in Oregon, and that I'm not here for that specific reason. I don't think that my project was any more deserving of funding than the projects that were funded. In fact, I'm sure that's the case. I am here to talk about transparency and predictability. So for context, the RFP that we and others responded to said that there was going to be 60 million of preservation dollars available. And the recommendations before you today take about half of that $60 million and reallocate it to other uses, primarily to recapitalize the PUSH program. And from the perspective of the applicant pool, that's very surprising. There may be a precedent for OHCS reallocating roughly half of an oversubscribed competitive pool, but I'm unaware of it. And ultimately, only 4 projects will advance. Primary reason for this, it's in the packet, is the constraint on private activity bonds. And without a doubt, that the fix for that is at Congress. There's so much that it all boils down to Congress, but there are things that OHCS could do. And I'm about to say these things from the perspective of one public agency talking to another. And I see it, our own agency, how difficult it can be to achieve the goals of transparency and predictability in the face of dynamic, rapidly evolving circumstances. But I do think there are a couple things. First, publicly update the list of known PAB requests, not just the project names, but the amounts. Second, consider how the PAB bond allocations in HBill 5005 could help keep some more of these preservation projects on track. And since I'm at time. Third, work with applicants who weren't funded, which is 2 out of every 3 applicants, to create a managed queue for projects that weren't funded this round. It's going to take a lot of time for applicants and for staff to review a whole bunch more applications again next year. And there's a significant opportunity cost for everybody to that. So I think
we are at time. I'm sorry if you have a final wrap up.
Just thank you for the opportunity to comment today. And appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you. Okay, is Danielle McBride ready?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine. Go ahead
Okay.
when you're ready, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hall and council members. My name is Danielle McBride. I'm the Director of Client Engagement for Cornerstone Community Housing. Cornerstone is a 501c3 nonprofit, affordable housing developer and resident services provider. Our home office is in Eugene, Oregon, and we work across the state of Oregon in 12 counties. Cornerstone is committed to building quality and affordable housing for people living on limited incomes while providing resident services that promote opportunity for personal growth and economic independence. In October of 2022, Cornerstone began providing services at Milepost 5, which includes community building activities, free food programs, clothing giveaways, and resource hours that help residents with a variety of needs. Our goal is to assist Milepost 5 residents where they are to build a successful and stable future. In the past 6 months, I've attended the Housing Stability Council meetings, and I've heard about the issues that residents are experiencing at Milepost 5. I want to take some time today to also provide some examples of positive outcomes that Cornerstone has witnessed for the residents at this site. In February, our resident services manager, Guinevere, was able to help a resident obtain rental assistance for 3 months, so they remain housed. Our team is bringing food on site twice a month for residents who need a little extra to get them through that month. And just last week, we were able to help a resident connect with an outside organization called Outside In, which is a local medical hub for the transgender and gender diverse community. Cornerstone understands the unique needs at Milepost 5. We acknowledge the frustration that many have expressed regarding the site. We are working together with ownership and property management and we look forward to continued progress and positive outcomes for the residents at this property. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate your leadership and commitment to affordable housing in Oregon. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Dorothy Albritton.
I don't see Dorothy's name. However, Dorothy, if you are on by phone, we have a few people joining us by phone only. Use the *9 to raise your hand.
All right, we'll come back to Dorothy at the end of the speakers list. Ebony Brown.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Ebony Brown. I'm the Executive Director at Greater Good Northwest, and currently I am actually contracted with the Milepost 5 community to kind of bring the community back together. I've been working on this project for 2 weeks now. I have talked with former residents, current residents, and neighbors. And while I do want to validate everything that everyone has said as far as the issues that we're facing at Milepost 5, I do want to recognize that community is coming back to Milepost 5. The arts are back at Milepost 5. There seems to be a lot more engagement. I'm hoping that that grows. I'm hoping that the safety, security, amenities, and also supportive housing grows at Milepost 5. And that's what I want to encourage here today. I want us to have an ongoing working relationship. I want to do my part in advocating and uplifting voices of the residents at Milepost 5, and also ensuring that people feel comfortable residing in their own spaces, that people feel heard, that we are timely responding to people's complaints and concerns. And I'm hoping that these funds will better secure that and move that process along. If the council at any time has any input on how they would like to see that move forward or how we can all work together, I am open anytime. I know Council Member Bell has my info. That is something that I am completely open to. And I appreciate you all just giving the time and space for everybody to voice their concerns and advocate for their home, for their community. This is a community space, not just a residential space. And a lot of people are depending on this. So thank you all for your time, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you. Brian Hoop.
Chair Hall and members of the committee. My name is Brian Hoop, Executive Director of Housing Oregon. My comments are in reference to a technical memorandum issued by Oregon Housing and Community Services on March 24th regarding updates to requirements for Article 11Q bond fund regulatory agreements. Housing Oregon has deep concerns about the implemented changes to the local innovation and fast track funds, the LIFT program, as outlined in the memo. This is a critical issue the Housing Oregon Board wants the Housing Stability Council to be aware of, and ask for your support in raising this issue with OHCS leadership and Governor Tina Kotek's team. I emailed the letter to you this morning that we sent to OHCS leadership and the governor's team. Collaboration is key to affordable housing development. And as responsible stewards of public funds, we believe there is an opportunity to work together to produce LIFT terms that are acceptable to all parties. We respectfully request that the LIFT program and documentation be returned to its previous form until OHCS first directly engages with bankers and investors before crafting new policy language. We ask OHCS not to delay projects closing in the near future before a new agreement can be established. In case you're not yet familiar with this issue, the technical advisory highlighted updates to the bond regulatory requirements for projects utilizing 4% low-income housing tax credits with the LIFT PSH intercreditor agreement. The technical advisory included updates to a previously negotiated agreement that are understood to be unacceptable by the banking community now, preventing their ability to participate in any future LIFT-funded projects. These revisions will have an immense impact on our state's affordable housing production and Governor Kotek's declared state of emergency housing initiatives. In the current market, predictability is of utmost importance to affordable housing developers, in order to provide certainty in schedule, budget terms, and for our partners during financial closings. And under these new terms, LIFT is rendered incompatible with the debt and equity available to affordable housing developers. And these changes will undoubtedly limit the development of affordable units, hindering critical production goals set by the state and local governments. So it's critical that OHCS restore the previous language and approach utilized for LIFT funding in 4% credit and tax exempt bond projects to ensure that development of affordable housing can continue in our communities. So you can read more details in the letter that I emailed you. We appreciate your consideration and support for conveying the urgency of this issue with OHCS leadership and the governor's office.
Thank you. Amber Cook.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good, you can hear me. Excellent. Good morning to the members of the Housing Stability Council and Chair Hall. I just want to state for the record that I contacted OHCS for help over 2 weeks ago, including the LIHTC Compliance Department and the Affordable Housing Division, and no one ever responded. Yet another time when our rights are being violated, and even being violated in OHCS's name, and we can't get help from anyone. I'm being harassed 3 months after the OHCS inspection here, while the only notice I was given 3 months after the inspection was to allow entrance for OHCS repairs. The nomination notice regarding window egress. Guardian sloppiness and negligence leads to me being set up to be evicted. There's no retaliation there, is there? In 2022, my rent went up by 5% while my heater often doesn't work. I spent a good 12 days at 55 degrees in my place, and no repair people are called when it's out unless I press for weeks at a time. Others here live permanently with no heat, despite reporting it many times over the last 3 years. My reasonable accommodation request has been ignored for 10 months, no matter how many times I contact the office about it. We have tenants here who haven't been given keys to their mailboxes after moving in 6 months ago. They've had no access to their mail for half a year. We have tenants being repeatedly denied being allowed to move to an unrented unit with a bathroom, even if badly needed for disability or trans safety, despite this place being barely rented out at 50% capacity. 2 weeks ago, 5 different residents went to the office to report that someone had taken a big human dump in the Art House kitchenette, the only accessible kitchen facility for people living on the first floor. And yet 5 hours later, staff went home without cleaning it up. It stunk up our entire communal arts social space, and the smell carried to the first and second floor hallways all night long, creating a real biohazard for us. It wasn't cleaned up until late the next day, and cleaned so poorly there are still streaks and splatters there 2 weeks later. Photos coming. Rent should never be raised when human beings live in these conditions, while the landlords don't provide the necessities laid out as essential in ORS 90-100 and continue to create health hazards by negligence. All our rent raises must be rescinded, refunded until the owners and managers follow the laws and provide semi-decent housing. Or else OHCS is saying renters' lives have no value and tenant protection laws are meaningless. I'd like to, back Neil in continuing to press for this independent audit, considering the dangers that we live in. And I must respond to say that, these positive reports of changes at Milepost 5 are dubious indeed. Art is only coming back because we're occasionally doing it with no support from CDP, Guardian, or Resident Guardian, despite constantly having stuff stolen and the filthy state of our art house and the art workshop remaining locked up for 3 years.
Excuse me, we're
Yes.
past time, so if you could
Okay.
wrap up, please.
Yes, just the last thing that's fantastic that a resident was helped to get rent assistance. We have residents being evicted every single month who are not getting help. So I appreciate, any work that people are doing on our behalf, but I do need to, contradict the idea that this place is getting better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gideon King.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right, great. First off, thank you for hearing our complaints this month. But I would like to piggyback off of something Amber Cook said about the fecal matter incident in the art house. Because the reason it was cleaned so poorly was because it wasn't cleaned by management. It was cleaned by a resident who needed to work in the art house because, as Amber said, our workshop has been taken over by janitors for the last few years and not given back to us. They managed to clean the bulk of it, and then about 9 days later, they managed to clean it off the walls. It was never touched by staff. Along with that, there was an incident where someone ejaculated on one of the couches, and one of the residents didn't know until they were about to sit down and the janitor told them. They sent out an email, the resident, not staff, sent out an email and put a sign letting people know not to sit there because of biohazard. The sign was taken down, the semen was not cleaned. Also, we have several bathrooms that have been locked, at least during a tour we were given to some of the people who just moved in. And the bathrooms that were not locked were covered in blood, in streaks that looked a lot like what would happen if they were using needles. The bathrooms with tubs, the floors are so rotten from water. There's no actual flooring there. It's just rotting floorboards. And one of those tubs, by the way, one of the residents has issues with chronic pain and had to use one of those tubs to help out. She could not use that tub until she cleaned out all the fecal matter. That seems to be a running thing here. Honestly, at this point, I feel like it's an allegory for how this place feels about its tenants. But I also back Neil that we do need an independent audit, as well as something that really disturbs me was that we had a tenant who not 2 months after moving here died of a drug overdose because they put him across from a place we've been warning them was filled with drug dealers and prostitutes, and nothing has been done about them. At this point, I don't know how to feel. I pay about $763 a month to live in 300 square feet. My rent was raised from $725 from when I moved here. I'm one of the lucky ones who has a bathroom. However, there are people who pay as much, if not more than me, to live in what is basically a bathroomless closet. And I just feel like it's not right. It is not right how people are treated here. It's not right what we live in. We live right across the lofts that are absolutely gorgeous, but we live in a slum.
Excuse
and
me.
I feel like we're not treated like people.
Excuse me, we're past the 3-minute time frame, so if you could wrap up, please.
Sure. I would just say that rent increases need to be frozen. There needs to be an independent audit. And I'm quite honestly ashamed of living here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Dorothy Albritton online?
I do not see Dorothy's name online.
Okay, is there anybody online who did not sign up in advance but would like to be heard now under public comment? If so, please use your raise hand function.
If you're on the phone, use the *9 to raise your hand. Emily Newton.
Yeah, good morning, Council. My name's Emily, and you've heard me talk before the last couple of months and meetings in person. You know, I'm a direct neighbour across from Milepost 5 Studios, and I've, witnessed a whole slew of things associated with this building: pistol whipping, deaths, prostitution, drug dealing, menacing. It goes on and on and on. And, sitting here again, listening to the tenants and the community talk about Milepost 5 Studios, is just heartbreaking that nothing is being done. And I hear these people talk from Cornerstone and the greater good, and You know, to be honest, it feels like lip service, because this is coming up over 3 years, almost 3.5 years of this. And I just, you know, hearing about people having to deal with human shit in their houses where they live is just, it's not surprising, to be honest, given the lack of management, the lack of regard for human life in Milepost 5 studios. And it's frustrating to me to hear that OHCS isn't doing anything to change what's happening. These are people's lives. I'm a neighbor and I'm affected. I'm not living in the building and I'm affected. There are still unsecured doors. We're seeing people going in and out at all hours of the evening. We're seeing drug deals. We're still seeing evicted tenants coming back to the building. We're seeing people with felonies who are not eligible to live there coming back to the buildings, living in the building. What are you doing? What is happening? How many times do we have to show up to these meetings, send emails, make phone calls? Until you do something about it, you have the power to do it. It's like, do an independent audit and see what's actually going on with the management, with the people who own this building. They're not doing the right thing, and yet they're getting the money for it, and they're letting people live in squalor. They're letting people live in fear. I was one of the people who was given death threats by ineligible tenant Jameer Olive, threatened my life. He followed friends of ours that were visiting in his car, raging them down the street. And this is a person that was not eligible to live there, who went on a rampage with weapons until early hours of the morning, harassed, assaulted people. This was a person that we let CDP and Guardian know several times that we were being harassed by this person, assaulted by this person. So, I mean, the list goes on. So I would just say, do your job, do the audit, make CDP and Guardian accountable. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard under public comment? Now's the time to raise your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, *9. All right, I guess.
We have a Rachel Duke.
Oh, okay. Rachel Dukes, you're up.
Hi, thanks. Actually, just calling in today to say thank you. We're super excited about getting to get started. I'm with Community Partners for Affordable Housing, and we are really looking forward to getting to start working on Plan Bet Gardens in Tualatin. And I just really wanted to say thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing, and how exciting. This is a really exciting project, and we're really looking forward to partnering with you on this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Rachel Duke, did you have another comment?
No.
Your raise hand function was up. Okay.
Oh, okay. I'll lower it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody for your input. We move on now to the next agenda item, which is report of the chair. I'm not going to say a lot here. I imagine Director Bell will be sharing more in her report in a moment, but the big housing and homelessness bill, making it all the way through the legislature. This is wonderful. This is historic, and I really have a strong feeling it's going to move the needle in communities across the state. And with that, I'll turn to Director Bell for the director's report.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, Chair Hall, members of the council. It's good to be in virtual community with you again this morning. Just a couple things at the top. First off, I want to just acknowledge and appreciate and affirm hearing all of the public comment. And I think to the note earlier that was mentioned around responsiveness, we will certainly look into what I heard was a delay in response, so that we can make sure that we are responsive to that. And then also, as always, any pertinent topics, which I think you heard one of them, which is around LIFT. We certainly will make sure that we have some ongoing time at council to make sure that there's public awareness of next steps around that, so that we can have that conversation, and also so that there's just collective awareness around any forthcoming decisions around that. So Chair Hall, I will perhaps launch off of what you had mentioned at the top. I will try and be as brief with my updates as possible. So I'll start off with, yes, I think certainly the most exciting news, which is that Governor Kotek has signed the early session housing package that we discussed at our last meeting. We'll certainly have more substantive information to share and discuss on our progress around the executive orders, but certainly want to lift up the galvanization around that, and certainly the governor's leadership around that, recognizing that both affordable housing and homelessness are issues of top mind and care and concern certainly across the state. So we're grateful for that progress. We've also passed 2 key deadlines since the last meeting. All bills have made it out of policy committee and into their original chambers. I'm also happy to report that all of OHCS bills are alive and active. 3 are awaiting a vote on the Senate floor. 1 House bill has already made it to the Senate, and then 2 bills are in Ways and Means. I also want to appreciate Chair Hall again for testifying in support of the agency's legislative agenda. Certainly, Chair Hall, don't want to speak for you, but I think just some key points of that testimony was really perspective on Senate Bill 892, Senate Bill 892. This is OHCS's general bill to improve the agency operations in Senate housing. This was in late March. We also had yet another presentation before our budget committee at the end of March, on March 30, in which Caleb Gant, our deputy director, wrapped up a few required items related to key performance measures, and then also on pending legislation as well. In the last 3 months of session, what we expect is that budget will be the primary point of conversation. Last month, the Ways and Means co-chairs released their budget framework. What you'll see in that is that the overall investments in housing were significantly less than the governor's recommended budget, as budget drafters didn't include the strategies in the governor's budget that the governor did in her budget. So we see this as certainly as a starting point in the full Ways and Means Committee will do their series of engagements to really listen and hear from community, to hear from the people of Oregon on what their needs are as defined and articulated by them, which is going to be continue to be a really important part of the decision-making process. And then we'll have more to come in May as we continue to learn more about actions that are coming out of Salem, but certainly want to just make sure that there's collective consciousness around how session is evolving from our seat. We haven't yet had a chance to have a conversation about it at council, and so I will yield any direction to the chair and to the council whether we want to have some ongoing conversation around that or just have updates around this, which is around Executive Order 2304. So I'm sure as the council is aware, as our partners are aware, Governor Kotek really appointed a diverse housing development subject matter experts to convene the body, which is the Housing Production Advisory Council. This body convened in early March of this year. For familiarity, in case anybody hasn't had a chance to really become aware of the contents of that executive order and what this body's role is this order sets out a very clear, ambitious course of action on a housing production goal of 36,000 homes per year and establishes this very council. And so with that 36,000 unit goal of affordable and market rate housing, this represents about 80% of an increase over current annual trends. So when we think about the need for affordable housing, obviously we've talked earlier in previous meetings around the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis. This is really built on the framework of that and really wanting to engage a broad array of stakeholders, state government and non-state government, to really inform that course of action. So this body has been hard at work and actively meeting. I believe in March, there was about 4 meetings, I believe 4 meetings that did take place. Now that there is an actual approved framework, we'll be moving into the next phase of this body's work. And as part of that framework to be successful, the co-chairs and the governor's office has really identified some core components that we need to look at within that work. So as we break into subgroups to begin really tackling some of the core components that will yield positive production progress in that. So we're talking about, yes, of course, some of the obvious things on specific to OHCS's role on financing tools, but it's also really looking at labor and land use and building codes. So some of the stuff that maybe doesn't seem like the most exciting things when we think about production, but I think for anybody that is deeply engaged and knows the difficulty, the challenges that go into building housing, both affordable and market rate, know that this is an opportunity to really strategically kick the tires and look under the hood to see what we need to do differently to accelerate housing on behalf of the people of Oregon. So wanted to make sure that there was that the council had awareness to that. And then the last thing I would just raise for consciousness, I am full disclosure, a broken record on this topic, and I will continue to be a broken record on this topic, is we have engaged deeply with this council around the compression and around the needs for private activity bonds and the need for Congress to act. So in August, we were in front of Senate Finance under the Senate Finance Committee to really urge for very clear course of action around private activity bonds to increase the cap and to increase the 50% test. That maybe sounds like a lot of jargon, but I think the important thing to know is these are pretty common sense technical fixes that can help in Oregon and across the nation, our efforts to build more affordable housing. Simply put, we continue to need Congress to act. We were hopeful, I don't think blindly optimistic, but I think nonetheless still optimistic that we were going to see forward momentum on that. We didn't. We have a renewed opportunity in front of us, so we will continue to galvanize and make sure that we can push for Congress to act and recognize that we have an opportunity in front of us to continue building more affordable housing, and we're going to need congressional action to really make the large scale impacts that we need. So with that concludes my updates. I'm happy to hear any direction or curiosity from the council on any of those matters. Otherwise, I will turn it over to you, Chair Hall.
Okay, I want to offer an opportunity, council members, any questions, feedback for Director Bell? Hey, hearing none. Oh, wait a minute. Councilmember Sandoval, you're up.
Okay, good morning. So in terms of the framework that they've come up with so far, like what would be some of the key roles that that our agency would play within that? I mean, I know it's still kind of early on, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Councilmember Hall, Councilmember Sandoval. So primarily our role in it as a state agency, and it obviously as the statewide funder of affordable housing, our role primarily sits within sort of a couple of areas. I would say the first one is from a state government and agency perspective, listening and hearing what the perspectives are in terms of where we currently do business, perhaps even in all its good intent and even with all of the progress that we have collectively been able to yield. I think there's an important role that we have to be able to hear where we need to make substantive optimizations and shifts to the way that we do business. So for example, Councilmember Sandoval, we came in with some very clear ideas and I think opportunities due to this with the support of affordable rental housing and Natasha's leadership, to bring in front of that body some ways where we believe that we can do business differently to help make meaningful progress. And we also recognize in that, that's just one perspective. That's just our perspective in that. And so we want to gut check that with that body to really listen and hear. And then I think the secondary role in it is thinking about where the financing tools in the context of all the other facets that play a role in yielding more and building more, particularly affordable housing. What is the relationship between those components, and whether there are vulnerabilities in our thinking to make sure that we have a broader set of looking at our financing tools and the relationship to all of those other pieces that play a role in building more affordable housing. I think we have substantial opportunity, and I think much of the opportunity with the Housing Production Advisory Council is there is a broad array of stakeholders across the state, different sets of expertise. And so I think we're coming into it knowing that we cannot continue to think that current ways of doing business are going to necessarily help us move progress in the way that we need to do it. And so I would say those are probably the primary areas of our work and responsibility in that. And then I fully expect that it will shift and expand and we'll get new direction once that body breaks out into work groups and begins diving into some of those pieces in a much more substantive and granular way as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Director. Just to follow up, I think it would be like this could really be an opportunity to shape the physical and social morphology of our cities in Oregon.
Right.
And really focus on increasing density, connecting housing to public transportation, walkable, cities and all that, and DLCD already has that framework, right? So it's great that both agencies are at the table, and I think you could really create some good synergy there.
Yeah, very much so. And I would just say, and I'll yield back after this, is I think what we know and what we know to be true is that housing done right can be an economic catalyst in communities. And so we certainly want to make sure that in that pursuit of progress that we're also thinking about the social context of housing and people in communities and access to core components in it as well. So I appreciate that, and certainly happy to make sure that we have some updates with regularity for this council.
Okay, Councilmember Mena.
Thank you, Chair Hall. I had a question regarding the Article 11Q bonds, lift funds, and the language change. Is there anything that can be done to address that concern? Because it is a real concern in terms of being able to use those funds for affordable housing development.
Yeah, I appreciate that, council member. Absolutely. And I think, so this is, I would say there's a couple things in this, and it is active. I believe that we will have a viable pathway. We absolutely need a viable pathway. The governor has been clear about her priorities and about what our collective priorities are. And so there is no time for anything that we believe would delay or inhibit those collective goals. We're working with DOJ certainly on the advisement that we received and having a series of engagements. I think you heard some feedback, some really honest, constructive feedback from folks around their concerns, which are very clear and valid concerns. We think there will be a viable pathway. There certainly needs to be a viable pathway. What I would say to that council member Mena is we would want to make sure that we can keep the council updated as this evolves in between meetings, but also at these meetings, so that there is public transparency about decisions that are made and what those potential impacts are, not only from our seat, but quite frankly, from our partner seat, our broad array of partner seat for the folks that are doing the work.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, any more council input at this time? All right, we will now move to the report of the Affordable Rental Housing Division. And is that team ready to go?
I believe we are. Hello, Chair Hall, Director Bell, and council members. I think before I jump into agenda items, I just will kind of, I'll pick up where Director Bell left off with our discussion of Article 11Q bonds, which came up in public comment and is certainly something that I wanted to walk on a brief overview of for Housing Stability Council members. This is the Article 11Q bonds is what the funding source that's used to fund LIFT, as well as our permanent supportive housing development resources, and is derived from this constitutional bond authority that requires the state to have ownership and operational controls. And we've been doing this for 5-6 years, and it has been incredibly impactful across the state to expand affordable housing development, and is also a really tricky resource to navigate the lines of accountability and clear adherence to the funding source requirements. And so as our council sought to update and streamline documents that makes it consistent across, kind of regroup, make it consistent across all of the different iterations and use of the resources, some recommended changes were identified, and that confidence that we're meeting the requirements is really required not only for our Department of Justice Council, but also for the state's bond council to be able to sell those bonds and make clear the commitment to be able to use this for affordable housing in a way that meets these other funding source requirements. And so we put out an advisory with some of the highlights about those, it really had a direct and immediate impact on the lending community and their ability to continue to participate. And so that was, I guess, not unforeseen and requires additional conversation and really digging in with them. On Monday, we met and held an open webinar, and we're able to share the draft updates in these documents with everybody that was interested, and walked through the rationale and implications of the changes. I then also had a follow-up meeting on Tuesday with lenders to specifically, since they then had the documents, to specifically understand what their barriers were to being able to participate in this program as it was kind of reset, recalibrated in these documents. And across all of it, there is a shared agreement and understanding that the state's affordability restrictions cannot be foreclosed. There's comfort with that. There's comfort that the state needs to be in a first lien position, and that we can share it. There's comfort with that. There's comfort with the state needing to have operational controls. The place where we are working to kind of find the path with lenders is that they are needing to have certainty that when there is a foreclosure, a need to foreclose, that all liens can be extinguished on the project. And so it doesn't in their calculus meet foreclosure requirements if the state still has an outstanding lien at the end of that process. And then there's, the details of where is repayment required and when does that happen. And so those are things that we have been actively in conversation and partnership with our Department of Justice, State Bond Council, and then our Conduit Bond Council. There's lots of robust legal minds engaged in trying to find the path and the solution here. I met with them last night and got an update and think that we have a path toward generating, the next iteration of documents for feedback and engagement. Today, I'm hoping to put out a communication to those that have been engaging with me about this to essentially summarize where we are. Next week, we'll be hopefully moving forward with some kind of temperature checks and additional conversation with lenders and developers. And I am hopeful that by the next Housing Stability Council meeting, we have a different update to provide that is as to the point of agreement and final rule update to be able to implement. But I think in the over these next weeks, everybody is really prioritizing making sure that we have a viable and active program to continue to have impact across the state. And so as much as council would like to be updated on a weekly basis or more than that, I'm happy to include you in all of the updates and have, engage in conversation as desired to make sure that we're bringing everybody in and participating in a way that would be helpful to you all. Any comments about that? I have a couple other responses I just wanted to put out there, but if there's any other input on the Article 11Q bonds, I'm happy to take that now.
Council, any input right now? All right, then I guess we'll start moving down your very full list.
Yes, we do have a full list, and
Great.
I'll first just do a quick milepost 5. You will see milepost 5 also come up on our transaction approval list here. I take to heart all of the comments that we heard in public comment. There has been, as we've reported last month, and is included in this month's milepost 5 update, we did 100% file audit and physical inspection of the project. Part of what happens then is that the property management then takes that report and makes sure to address any remedy or anything that was requiring a remedy at the project. And so part of that that feeling of that then much later after the fact, they're coming in to resolve issues that came up through that inspection. It's essentially part of the process. I have reached out to the compliance team to make sure that Amber Cook gets direct follow-up on the issues that she raised this morning in public comment. And I do think some of those were tied to what was shared in that inspection report. And we just want to make sure that we're not just following up with property management, but following up with the tenants directly as well. We also heard some comment about the preservation NOFA, which we have as another funding item here coming forward, and maybe I'll share my comment to that as we intro that item. And so I will just move then forward to hand it off to Ty Dunson-Estrada and Roberto Franco to do transactions. And I will just take a second here, Ty, to get your presentation up. You can go ahead and get started.
Good morning, council members, Chair Hall, Director Bell. For the record, my name is Ty Dunson-Estrada, production manager here to present 3 motions for 2 projects. One bond motion for Plumback Gardens, and another motion for housing trust funds for Plumback Gardens, and then a third motion for additional pass-through revenue bonds for the Susan Image project. The Plumback Gardens project. Next slide. We consider it working towards on our equity and racial justice metric, and the reason for working towards is they're still in conversation with a couple of culturally specific partners, and they're still haven't wrapped up those MOUs, but are actively engaged in conversation with those partners. So I'll detail through this presentation. So the project is located in Tualatin. It's 116 units and has Metro bond funding as well as local home dollars. The HTF request is a little over 3,245,000, and the taxes and bond request is totaling over 35 million. The project includes a range of affordability and includes 4-bedroom units, 2 elevators, and a host of amenities. There are plans to partner with Central Cultural, the Native American Rehabilitation Association, LifeWorks in Northwest, and other community action agencies. They do plan to do robust outreach with their property manager and also enlist the help of Central Cultural NAR and the local community action agency. The NWSB target is 30%, and we said this project, it fills three of our statewide housing priorities: affordable rental housing, permanent supportive housing, and homelessness. And then the next project is Susan Emmons. We previously approved this project for OMEP and 4% LIHTC and private activity bonds, but just due to situations outside of the developer's control, we are seeking an additional $3 million in private activity bonds in order to meet the 50% tests, and for this project to stay on track to complete the second building construction. They're already under construction and had finished up the first building, NHA, they are partnering with a couple of culturally specific organizations. They have MOUs with NAIA and the Urban League, as well as Northwest pilot project for direct referrals, and the project includes range of affordability and 146 units, and it is scheduled to once this PAB is granted, the project is still on track to finish construction this year, and the project meets 3 statewide housing priorities: affordable rental housing, equity and racial justice, and permanent supportive housing. With that, I'll open it up for any questions folks may have.
Any questions or comments from the council? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion then.
Move that we approve the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Could we have the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair Hall. For the record, Councilmember DeFontorum had to leave the meeting. Councilmember Farrell.
Approved.
Chair Hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. Let's keep rolling.
Great. Thank you so much. And next up, there he is, Martin Jarvis presenting Wood Springs Apartments. And this is part of our preservation pool, and it's been a long endeavor to bring to the council this item.
Good morning, Chair Hall, Director Bell, council members. For the record, my name is Martin Jarvis, State Tax Credits Program Analyst. I'm here to recommend Wood Spring Apartments for an allocation of push preservation resources. Wood Spring Apartments is sponsored by the Housing Authority of Washington County. This project will preserve 172 units of affordable housing and is located in the city of Tigard in Washington County. The project promotes OHCS's affordable rental housing priority and currently provides housing for seniors. Wood Springs LIHTC restrictions expired in, completely forgot to move the slide, apologies. Wood Springs LIHTC restrictions expired in 2021. The Housing Authority of Washington County intends to acquire the property to preserve the affordability. This push award would preserve the project for an additional 60-year period. The Housing Authority also plans to work toward a tax credit resyndication at a later date. They intend to add project-based vouchers at unit turnover with the goal of covering 50% of the units with these vouchers. The Housing Authority of Washington County houses the local continuum of care and a supportive housing service program, putting them in an excellent position to coordinate needed services through community partners. In addition, they have a staff person dedicated to Wood Spring Apartments, coordinating meetings and assisting with applications for assistance. Wood Springs is furthering agency standards on equity and racial justice. Wood Springs restrictions expired before we had the capacity to track demographic data in ProLink, and the seller has elected not to share tenant data with the Housing Authority until after acquisition is finalized. Consequently, we do not have any current demographic details available for this project. That said, going forward, we will be tracking these details and making sure that they align with our requirements. The sponsor is requesting $25 million in push preservation funds. I'm happy to answer any questions on the materials as presented and otherwise ask you to consider the motion on page 20 of your packet.
Questions from council? If not, I'd like to entertain the motion on page 20 of the packet.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Okay, could we have the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair Hall. Councilmember Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Minna,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right. Next up, milepost 5, right?
That is right, and I believe that Martin is up for this one as well, and I will, I think I included a memo in the packet from me, trying to frame and give context for why we feel and why I feel that this is the right investment step to take for milepost 5. I know, obviously, we are continuing to hear from residents and neighbors expressing concern about the status of the project, and we have seen deliberate commitment and action from CDP and Guardian to make sure that we are working to center tenants' health, safety, and well-being. And these rehab dollars are really a critical component to that. We have seen them enter into agreement with service providers and Greater Good Northwest to really center tenant work and priority. And if we can't have them remedy, if they are unable to remedy some of the real significant structural issues at the property, there are some fundamental pieces that are not going to be able to be addressed. And that is really the purview through which I feel both confident and compelled to bring this recommendation forward to you all today. So with that, I think I'll hand it off to Martin, and happy to answer any questions that you might have after that.
Thank you, Natasha. I am now here to present milepost 5 for an allocation of preservation resources. Milepost 5 is sponsored by Community Development Partners. This project promotes OHCS's affordable rental housing priority. Milepost 5 requires an infusion of rehabilitation funding to address several issues with degraded building systems. These building systems include the roof system, electrical infrastructure, the fire system, first floor windows, and common area facilities. These funds will help stabilize the project's finances and improve the residents' experience. We have been working with Milepost 5 to find solutions to community concerns tied to project management, maintenance, and operations. This request will help address these concerns and resolve the issues. Resident services are provided by Cornerstone Community Housing and also by Greater Good Northwest. CDP brought Greater Good Northwest on board to help achieve the goal of bringing a sense of community back to Milepost 5 and to get buy-in from the surrounding neighborhood. Milepost 5 is working toward meeting agency standards on equity and racial justice. We had a 76% response rate for tenant demographic data in our systems. We combined categories where the sample sizes were too small to be meaningful as separated out entries. As you can see by the table, both Milepost 5 and the wider neighborhood are majority Black. The main difference between the tenant population and the wider neighborhood is the larger percentage of white residents versus the percentage of the combined category in the wider neighborhood. The sponsors are requesting $3,325,000 in preservation funds. This is $35,000 per unit. I'm happy to discuss any questions on the materials as presented, and otherwise ask you to consider the motion on page 24 of the packet.
Questions or discussion, Councilmember Mena?
Couple things. One is I would have appreciated to have that demographic information on the packet, because it was missing, and all of the preservation projects that are coming through. If we can include that demographic information, that would be great. You know, this is one of those that we've heard a lot over the last almost year in regard to challenges associated both from tenants and neighbors. And one of the things that I don't see here, trying to address some of those concerns, or at least speak to them, whether you feel that, you know, that the action being taken is proposed is sufficient, or whether they are in compliance. And one of those things that I've heard that's not here, it talks about the safety of the building in terms of screening criteria. And I don't see anything here in regard to that concern that I would definitely love to. And all I need to know is, you know, you feel that the property management company is doing what it needs to do in regard to that. An observation that I had in this project is that they all restricted at 60%, at least from what I could tell. But it seems, based on at least the public comment and some of the tenant information, that the population may be much lower in the AMI on that. And if that is the case, there's, you know, how are we ensuring that the tenants are stable? And I know that there's just partnerships that are coming along, which is great. The last comment I have in terms of the equity, there was a component of, you know, they will do an affirmative for housing marketing plan, and all projects have to do that. And my question is, what's unique about this, that they will be able to reach the communities and on our equity, based on our equity goals? So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mena, and I am Merton. I'll kick off. If you have other insight, you can please contribute. In terms of, absolutely, we've heard a lot of feedback and dialogue around tenant selection and the review process therein, and that was a large part of the driving force for us choosing to do 100% file audit instead of a sample size audit as part of this last review that was held early this year. And I think that we have generally confidence around that aspect of it, and are also working, I think hopefully next month, to be able to bring back to council information on what tenant selection plans are and how our LIHTC restrictions intersect with the FAIR ordinance that is also in Portland, because that starts to impact how prioritization needs to happen and what that review and screening process looks like, and the FAIR ordinance being specific to Portland and a unique thing to navigate. So I'm hoping that we're going to be sharing more kind of information back with Housing Stability Council about that. And as it's been something that we've been, as we're looking at the process that has been put into place at Milepost 5 in order to really navigate those differences. I think you're also spot on, Councilmember Mena, that there are tenants, that a large portion of tenants within Milepost 5 are not 60% tenants and are requiring and really in need of more robust supports. I do believe that the CDP has also submitted an application in our permanent supportive housing NOFA for services and rent assistance to be able to provide additional supports. And so I think trying to understand, is it really, you know, where are we looking to be able to provide really supportive services that would traditionally be part of a permanent supportive housing project versus traditional rent assistance. And this is really part of this shifting tendency that they've seen. It is an SRO project at 60%. It's been difficult to actually find tenants that are in need of 60% SROs. And really we are seeing much lower income populations. And I think that is likely to continue, but that it needs to, you know, again, invest in these tenancy supports and measures to be able to make actual progress along those lines, and that the change is not going to be swift, but that they are taking all of those actions, not just talking, but actions to be able to better do so.
Yeah, and along those lines, you know, there's two different components, right? One is ensuring that the tenant in that unit is stable and supported. I don't know what the rents are for those tenants to be paying on those units. And the other component is the sustainability of the project itself, right? Yeah. So if they're not able to charge the 60% rents that they have pro forma, then we have deferred maintenance and we get all along, again, all these issues that don't have the resources to be able to maintain the property.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is where they are, I believe, you know, as we review requests for rent increases, any rent increase above 5% is reviewed by OHCS, and in that we consider tenant rent burden, and I think that has been the basis for not approving and allowing rent increases higher than that 5% threshold, and it does prove financially challenging when their initial modeling was assuming higher AMIs. And so there's potentially a longer term different type of workout, but right now really trying to focus on making sure that the critical rehab needs are addressed and that tenant supports are put in place to make sure that and security in place that is appropriate to being able to have that confidence of stability for the current tenants before choosing another structure.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Farrell.
I think Councilor Mena addressed some of my questions, but the Milepost 5 information comes in sometimes like different buckets of information. And I'm wondering if there's something that exists that's like, here's the comprehensive approach to our response to the Milepost 5 variety of issues. Does something exist that's like a more comprehensive plan of action? And the reason I kind of ask that is my concern here is, you know, are we putting good money after bad, or is there an accountability plan? Some of the concerns we heard just this morning just give me continued concern about the ability to respond on the parts of the property managers, just given the various nature of even basic janitorial issues. So I guess like what's the accountability? What if we approve these funds and it still is like a slow and non-responsive measure to addressing some of these concerns?
We have been putting together monthly updates, but I don't think it's quite tracking as you're describing, Councilmember Farrell. So I think we can refresh that strategy and instead really say what the kind of track through issues. I don't know, Director Bell, if you're wanting to say something.
Yeah, no, I
Just
certainly
reading
don't
your
want to
face
cut you off.
appropriately. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, certainly don't want to cut you off. Councilmember Farrell, I want to make sure I'm mirroring back what I think I'm hearing, and then you can keep me honest and tell me if I'm off. I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing a seeking of a comprehensive plan as to how the agency is responding to addressing and holding investments and those who are carrying those investments accountable across all facets of what we've heard, which we have given regular updates, but Natasha is correct. We haven't given that comprehensive. So I'm hearing a need for that, like a one place. And then I'm hearing a secondary comment, which is more of a question that is being posed around in light of the cacophony of things that we have heard. What does accountability to these particular investments look like? Perhaps above and beyond normal oversight measures, given what we've heard. Is that accurate?
That is what I'm asking. You're correct.
Okay, perfect. So I would, I certainly, Natasha, don't want to jump in front of you. So we can follow up and perhaps compile our information differently that we have given month over month to provide the council with that visibility. And then I'll yield and turn it to Director Datwiler Davey to talk about sort of oversight to continue the conversation. So thank you for letting me interrupt.
Absolutely, thank you. And yeah, and I think too, accountability, and it probably will be mirrored back into that summary document as well. But I do also know that they are working with our asset management group. Again, they've been actively involved with me around working through, what do we really need? And, the emphasis that I've been placing is on, we need tenant engagement. We need tenants to be prioritized and centered. And I've felt response to that and action to that. And that's where I think, getting into these contracts and really seeing that presence step in, and it's not on day one going to address all of the things, but that it is doing some of that work. And I think we see critical commitment to that. And we are also working with them on our asset management side on an overall property improvement plan that really scales out all of the actions over, a calendar and tracks all of that. We have the contracts that they have entered into for prioritizing tenants, and we have the, losing the name of the contract, essentially the architectural assessment, the need for rehab that is details through each of those, critical bodies of work that need to happen. And I feel like if we are generally seeing that they are continued response, we're meeting with them monthly, if not more, and that we are really tracking that. So I don't feel I feel like there could be a concern if they were not being responsive and not acting about putting good resources after bad. I think that there is potential and hope here, and there is a community of tenants that really is wanting to engage and get the support that is being offered. And I think all of that feels hopeful and is and that continuing that not addressing the physical components and withholding that ability is not going to be able to lend towards success, no matter how much engagement we really are doing on the property. But we'll be monitoring it through all of the rehab to make sure the rehab is happening and is performative and on schedule, as well as continuing to track and engage on the resident support and the engagement side of the coin, especially as it applies to property management and the timeliness of addressing physical cleaning conditions on the property.
Thank you for that response. And I'll just sort of wrap up my thought on that response with, it would, I heard you say you're continuing to hear feedback that there has been a response, and then we're hearing testimony also from tenants that are expressing in spite of that, they're not seeing it. So there could be some still differing opinions or perspectives on that. I guess it would be nice if there could be a tenant survey so that we're really hearing the voices of the tenants specifically, because they're the ones most, impacted by this. If there's like a survey loop or a feedback cycle that we could then see in an anonymous format that, yes, 80% are seeing demonstrated improvement or feel safer or feel like things are being addressed versus 80% feel like nothing's happening. I think that would be a quality metric that would be worth tracking.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
Councilmember Rogers, then Councilmember Sandoval.
Yeah, so I too am concerned about giving money and not getting a really good return on investment, and that return not necessarily just being dollar for dollar, but tenant satisfaction. And I like the idea of having an anonymous survey performed. The other question I have is whether or not it is possible to roll out the money in stages. So I heard Ms. Detweiler indicate that there's a list of priorities and how different improvements should be made. I'm not the project manager, but I keep hearing security concerns. So I would want to know that that's high on the list or one of the first things to be addressed with these particular funds. I also understand that it is important to fix things and that if there isn't money given, it's not going to help the problem. But what I don't want to have happen is us to say, okay, here's all this money and now go do whatever, and us not having a way to say, hey, things are not happening as we thought they would to address these problems, and then we have no recourse. So accountability, yes, is something that's important. And again, I just don't want to say, yes, here, take all this money, and yes, give us a report on what you're doing, and still there's no satisfaction with the tenants. There are still all these safety issues. So those are my comments.
I just to quickly respond to that, I think the critical rehab needs that they have put forward are really that. They are the critical ones that need to be addressed now, and there are others that they're planning over the long term. And it is, I think, as you're indicating, it is related to security. And so if they can't fix the roof, then they can't eliminate the ability for the ongoing vandalism that's getting into the attic and the insulation, and that is then creating additional impact to tenants and health concerns related to that. And so and then it also then exposes security concerns. So I think that there's all of this that is integrated, and that there is this critical part. They're only able to access resources as they are using them to be able to go toward the actual project that we are tracking them through with. So we have it, they're on a draw basis where they're expending it as they go. And that we, I think maybe sharing what that overall property improvement plan looks like as part of this next update will maybe be that other piece of the picture to help inform how we are tracking both today's critical needs as well as this long-term strategy, and and overall feel like failure to serve these tenants and meet their needs is not an option. And so that is not a failure that I think we are willing to entertain at this point in time.
Okay, Councilmember Sandoval.
Yeah, so I was going to ask So if we were to not approve the funds, what effect would that have on the residents?
I mean, overall not great. I think they would continue, there would be some pieces of this, of their needs that will not be able to be addressed in terms of, I don't, Martin, the bodies of work from this, these resources. Can you just I think that your presentation covered those, right?
Yeah, as mentioned in the capital needs assessment and in the contractor's estimate of the proposed scope of work, they need to repair the roof. They need to replace all of the windows on the first floor. They need to install new doors with more robust locks. All of the internal spaces, the ability to actually maintain them and keep them clean has fallen into disrepair and needs to be renovated. It's a pretty extensive list.
So it seems like we're in a pretty difficult position in terms of the council, because I'm hearing that this is not a sustainable building, and it's almost like we have to vote yes, or else things are going to fall apart even more. But we're also concerned about the follow through and accountability issues. And so I'm not sure how we're going to remedy that.
Yeah, and I have been slow in bringing this item to Housing Stability Council for recommendation, because I really needed to see the action on the centering of tenants. And I have seen the action in terms of entering into contracts to support tenants and do what they are needing to do as property ownership and property management to make me feel comfortable that there's a strategy in place that will accomplish better outcomes than we are seeing today. And it's, there are no certainties about the impact on 199 residents, or however, the 90 residents, but there is significant time and energy and attention and resources being put to try to do so. And I think I was unwilling to bring this item to council until we saw that really happen at the property level.
Councilmember Mena.
Thank you. I just a couple of things, and I'll be quiet. I think that first of all, I like to echo what Councilmember Farrell mentioned in terms of having the holistic view of addressing the things that have been said at the meetings, as well as from staff, in all, just in one document that says this is what has been said, and this is what our response is, what I believe is. I think that's important for us to know, and especially when we're looking at approving funds for this project and be able to maintain it. I completely understand the need for the critical repair. It has to be done. We have vulnerable households, individuals living in these units that they need to make sure that they live in a safe environment. My challenge, very honestly, is that as you mentioned, Director DeWeiler, there are other repairs that are not being addressed because you only have resources for the critical repair. Well, and definitely there's a need to ensure that the residents are able to stay there and remain there. Without rent assistance, there's not going to be any money to be able to do any other repairs, and the project will continue to go into disrepair. So talking about going back and talking about, what is that holistic approach to this project, to this issue, and it's not there, at least from what I'm seeing here. I know that there's an urgency here, but is there an opportunity for them to be able to get rent assistance? Otherwise, they have to raise rents, and this vulnerable residents will not be able to stay there, right? And so that's the challenge as I see it.
Yeah, and as I said, they've applied through our PSH NOFA to be able to start adding rent assistance and supportive services to the project. And as they work on their property improvement plan with our asset management group, that's based on their actual rent collections that are not being escalated. And that is, set at 5% per year, and it's not able to, jump from a 30% rent to a 60% rent. But we're also well aware that we don't have the ability to tolerate 60% rents when you have 30% households within. And so I think there's a lot of local linkages that are ongoing. There's other services teams within the community that we have funded through our recent capacity building offerings that intend to do some of that connection work with, included with rent assistance providers. And there's not enough rent assistance in the state to cover all tenants that really need and require it. But I think, there is time and attention being paid to the short term and the long term. This piece of recommendation is absolutely a short term critical need, and we are looking at the long term perspective as well. And so happy to be able to follow up with more long term plans and strategies with Housing Stability Council. I think the degree to which we can put all of those details on public record is I need to balance all of those needs, but I do think that it makes sense that you need to understand and want to understand how this project is going to be sustainable in the long term.
Councilmember Farrell.
Thank you for that, Natasha. I appreciate that. And I understand that not every body of work that you guys are doing is going to be on a step-by-step bringing the council along. I think this particular conversation is in the forefront of our emails on a daily basis. And so it is perhaps something that the council is needing to hear a little more of that behind the scenes, like bring us along with you so that we're ready to have, I think this conversation might be helpful, just speaking for myself. But I guess my real question is going back a little bit to when this project was first funded, when the investment was first made. Is it a normal expectation that all future renovations or building improvements have to come from future investments? There's not any kind of sustainability plan as an expectation of awarding funds for projects like this initially? Because that gives me concerns too. I mean, as property managers, isn't that part of what you collect rent for, is to make sure that you're able to maintain the property? And I feel like what I'm hearing is they're saying there's going to be no maintenance or addressing of serious critical issues that result in safety issues for the tenants unless OHCS continues to give further investments. And is that normal? And that's a genuine question. Is that what we expect?
I don't think that this is what we expect. I think this was and always has been a very unique project to take on. I mean, not only is it an acquisition rehab, it was of a previously city funded artist commune of some iteration, where when that acquisition happened, it was really, unclear what qualified as an actual unit in the project, how many tenants were actually in the project, and what their incomes were. I know my understanding is we did not, besides 4% tax credits, did not put any grant or cash resources into this project at all. So this was funded assuming that they would be able to do 60% rents, and then acquired it and found not only was there rehab needs that hadn't been identified that really quickly accumulated, and the tenants and the rents that they were paying were much less than were being modeled. And I think this has improved our sophistication when we are stepping into an acquisition rehab of something characterized as naturally occurring affordable housing, that we actually need to model based on current rents, not on anticipated future rents. And, and that there are now, in addition to OHCS oversight over rent increases, we have state statutory limits in terms of rent increases that we're also managing across all of these. And so I think this is a bit of a different piece than what would normally happen. And this is also an historic building. It has lots of very old systems and unidentified needs, and most properties that are being used for affordable housing are not historic buildings and don't have all of these different dynamics ongoing. And I do think, we had this rehab pool that they applied through to be able to address critical need. They have met that requirement, and is not normally something that we would see to be invested in the first 10 years of a project's operations. And yet this, because of the specifics of the situation, it is needed. And we do want them to figure out, how do we recalibrate? I think there's, other strategies that we just don't have resources to support at this point in time, and might there be in the future? Absolutely. But we need to be able to address these critical needs now, while we don't have money to kind of do that substantial financial overhaul of their structure and resources to model on 30% rents. But that's a goal to think through into the future, how we can do so. In the meantime, they're not able to, we have not allowed them, and we will not allow them to increase rents above what is minimally required or an expectation.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, further questions or feedback from the council?
Chair Hall, may I just
Certainly.
introduce I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of not only like just the richness of this discussion, but some very clear actionable themes that I think I'm hearing from this body, which is around accountability, and also going forward engagement with council around those accountability mechanisms. And so council will keep me honest here, but it seems as though there is some question to be answered, or some direction that we need from council around to what extent does council want to be engaged going forward, and to what extent does council want to be engaged in any forthcoming accountability and oversight mechanisms, perhaps above and beyond what our normal engagement is. So that seems, Chair Hall, to me like a fitting place for perhaps council to take that back and give us some direct advisement, so that we are one, continuing to be transparent with the public as part of this conversation, meeting the needs of the tenants, but also ensuring that we are meeting the needs of the council in terms of that accountability and engagement.
May I ask a question of the other counselors? Is that okay, Chair Hall? Okay, do we feel?
I'm sorry, I didn't unmute, but yes, please.
Oh, it's okay. Do we feel like this is ready for a vote, or do we feel like we need to have some language around accountability, or like an action plan that incorporates tenant feedback as part of that consideration? Or is that feedback that we can give to Director Bell after we sort of release these funds so that they can get started? I'm just curious, like, if we're ready. I don't want to like get in the way of a vote, but if we're not sure if we're ready, like, is there something that needs to happen to amend this?
I personally would like to amend this, but first, I would ask, what is the timeline for the lineup of the project? So I know you have a contractor in place. I mean, are they supposed to be starting tomorrow if we approve the funding, or what does that look like?
So they wouldn't be starting tomorrow. We would need to go through the reservation and conditions letter process and fill out the legal documents and take them for review. It would be starting this summer.
And I think, and we can't initiate that process until we have council approval. And so I do think we could, as an item for that reservation letter, I guess a recommendation or a thought for council consideration is whether having inclusion in the reservation letter, deliverable of sharing and getting council input on the long-term property improvement plan be a part of that, that reservation letter. I think stalling the reservation letter another month means that they won't be able to secure the contractors' time and rates essentially, and would push that back another month, which puts the summer start at risk.
I greatly appreciate that, Dr. Dwyer. I think that from my perspective, I think that that's a good option. That the need is desperate, and I think that they need to get going on this repairs as soon as possible from my perspective. To answer your question, Director Bell, I personally don't need to be heavily involved in the discussions. I just need to get some type of report that addresses the things that we hear, or that I hear on the public comment, and also what we see based on this discussion. You know, that definitely the sustainability plan for the project, how they're going to be able to sustain it after they get this, however that plan is. I think that's something that is needed, and the funding should be conditioned upon them showing that. If not, then something else is to happen, very honestly, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, that's about it.
Well, I'll say that I would be ready to move forward with this today, depending on where the council stands. I understand the reasons for caution and concern. It's a case of, certainly if these investments aren't made, the situation will continue to deteriorate, but will this be enough, or will this move the needle enough that tenants can start to see some real progress? So anybody else want to weigh in?
I like the idea of adding something additional to the documentation if we go ahead and approve the project, because we are between a rock and a hard place.
Very much so.
So an approval with a condition that we will have a sort of an accountability plan and a feedback loop and some ongoing updates. Is that what you have in mind, Sharon? Like a caveat to the approval?
Either that, or Ms. Detweiler mentioned something about how they can include that in the legal documents that are drawn up with the funding.
Yeah, I think I guess I would the inclusion in the reservation letter of a requirement to complete and share a long-term property improvement plan and accountability structure. Does that sound right?
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Okay, so if and so I think that sentence we can add to the motion on page 24 of your Housing Stability Council packet. So approve the funding as documented in there, and include in the reservation letter the requirement to have a property improvement plan and accountability structure identified and shared, including with input for opportunity for input from Housing Stability Council.
And how do we get the tenant survey or that particular loop added?
Yeah, I would like to see that added too. I think it's
okay. I do think the properties regularly do tenant survey. So I will, so let's add to the reservation letter that part of the accountability structure includes tenant survey to track and document progress and concerns.
And I don't want to be that person, but it's easy to say like, sure, we'll survey. It's different to say we'll survey. And if satisfaction continues to be really low, then that will be input to the ongoing plan. I mean, I think there needs to be just the act of surveying them is a little bit of a checkbox versus that feedback, will help influence the ongoing continuous improvement.
Understood, yes.
Hey, would somebody feel comfortable in crafting a motion?
Can we get assistance on what that motion would sound like based on the discussion that we just had?
Okay.
Councilor Rogers did a good job of, I think if we took the motion as it's written with the amended language, do you want to restate that? Councilor Rogers, I think you did a good job of summarizing.
Put me on the spot. So it was going to be in the preservation letter that there would be additional accountability as far as the improvement plan, along with tenant survey with I guess actionable progress or something. Because again, we don't want them just to check the box and say everything is okay.
Tenant survey as a quality metric indicator.
I just put into the chat the following statement: to include in the reservation an accountability to document a property improvement plan, an accountability structure with actionable progress documented and informed by a tenant survey.
Excellent.
I think that works.
Everybody comfortable with that?
We'll see.
Okay,
What
well,
would the timing be for that?
So the reservation letter criteria is something that needs to be all addressed in advance of them actually initiating the fund draw. So with your approval today, this would be added to the reservation letter. We would need to see them perform against it before they actually access resources.
Okay.
would somebody be willing to make the motion, including the information on page 24 as supplemented by with the language that Natasha has just proposed?
Yeah, I'll move to amend the motion.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion?
yes, thank you for the rich discussion to have us all feel comfortable in moving forward this project.
Yes. Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair Hall. Councilmember Farrell,
I will approve it or say yes.
Chair Hall,
Approve.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes,
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes as amended.
Okay, thank you, council members. Thank you, staff, for some rich, robust discussion, and we'll move along.
Yes, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to following up on that criteria as well. So next up, we have our preservation NOFA recommendations. And the preservation NOFA, the pools were essentially, an open door, you had to meet criteria. The NOFA is where we had more applicants than resources. As we heard through public comment this morning, and is in your memo packet. We were able, and not to not to thwart the presentation that's forthcoming, but to commit 30 million, around 30 million in preservation resources. The true cap to being able to put preservation resources out in this offering was the ongoing reliance of applicants on the 4% tax credit, which requires private activity bonds. And as we've discussed over this past year, private activity bonds are incredibly constricted, and to that end, we capped the amount that we were willing to commit through these offerings. And so this essentially brought it to the natural cap. In terms of the resources that remained, so the other 30 million that would have been offered, we had also pulled from, in all of the worlds of resources, preservation resources directly from the legislature, as well as some of our more flexible gap funding. And so we will carry over the unutilized gap resources into next year. So we'll prioritize deploying all of the preservation funds for our preservation resources and deploy that remaining 30 million in funds next year to continue to support preservation. And so that's a transparency metric that was, I think, requested, as was being able to share all of our private activity bond usage. And we will be updating some of that information is already available, but we'll be updating that in this coming week to make sure that the latest and greatest is posted and available for folks to access. And so I think with that, I will hand it off to Roberto and team. I see, and Michael Parkhurst, I think he's here. Yeah.
Michael is doing the presentation. Thank
Oh,
you.
great. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me all right? Chair Hall, Director Bell, and members of the council. My name is Michael Parkhurst. I'm the Preservation Program Manager in the Affordable Rental Housing Division. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here to present staff recommendations for funding under the 2022 Preservation NOFA. Oops. Sorry about that. This NOFA was released in September 2022 and closed in January 2023. Eligibility was restricted to one of several kinds of properties: those with expiring federal rent assistance or USDA rural development mortgages, OHCS portfolio properties where rent restrictions were expiring soon, or properties that were at risk because of physical condition. We also allowed public housing authorities to apply where they were looking at a rental assistance demonstration project with sort of comprehensive recapitalization. The NOFA furthered several statewide housing plan priorities, including equity and racial justice, affordable rental housing, and rural communities. We had 12 final applications, 8 urban and 4 rural, totaling more than $100 million in requests for preservation funding. We had offered up about $62 million. And as Natasha mentioned a minute ago, we had requests for $194 million in private activity bond cap. And that was truly the constraint on how many projects we could recommend for funding. The 4 highest scoring projects you see recommended here total $32 million in preservation funding. Natasha already went over the barrier with the private activity bond cap and plans to redeploy the uncommitted funds that will still be left over after today for future preservation issues. I will mention we expect to bring to the council next month our brand new preservation strategy framework in a draft form for feedback and comment from the council. And that will really guide and focus future preservation investments and help clarify our preservation priorities to partners. With that, I'm going to run pretty briskly through these slides, but look forward to any questions you have or more information that you want. The first project that's up is one of 2 from Chrisman Development. Both the Chrisman projects bundled together multiple USDA rural development projects with expiring mortgages or mortgages that are coming up for maturity soon. So those projects were at risk of expiration. The first one is Cypress Hills, which is 3 properties, 1 in Cascade Locks, 1 in the Dalles, and 1 in Reedsport, 100 units total. This is an acquisition and rehab project with a scope of addressing multiple critical needs, including roofs, windows, doors, siding, etc., interior improvements and necessary upgrades, things like heating and cooling, flooring, lighting, water heaters, plumbing, really addressing a lot of things that haven't been looked at in about 30 years. The demographic data, because of the small size of these projects, it triggered this department's data suppression policy. If we have fewer than 5 responses in a particular category, we don't show the data for that category for privacy reasons. But I can show you the data across the board here. Taking the 3 together, across the 100 units, roughly 10% of the population identified as Hispanic or Latino. About 26% of the tenants are 65 and older, and about 18% said they experienced a disability. Though I think we had one project of these 3 where we had specific data on, and you can see the data here. The percentage of BIPOC residents was higher than in the surrounding area for this property. I think that's correct, yeah. The next property is also a Chrisman bundled scattered site property. Again, this is 3 properties, 2 in Gold Beach and 1 in Port Orford. Another acquisition rehab with USDA RD loans maturing. And the rehab scope is really the same scope I just mentioned. It's roofs, it's windows and doors and siding and interior improvements, bringing up to code and modern standards, plumbing and appliances and things like that. The demographic data, again, that this did trigger the data suppression policy, I think, on all 3 properties. So we don't have property specific information here. In one of the properties, the white non-Hispanic population is overrepresented in the resident community compared with the surrounding area. In one of the others, it's about the same. And in one, there are more Hispanic Latino residents than in the surrounding area. About 26% of these tenants are 65 or older, and about 45% reported living with a disability. I also want to mention for both the Chrisman projects, they've committed to affirmatively furthering fair housing as units turn over, and have plans to engage with the larger community. And they also had credible plans to provide culturally responsive services where appropriate. The first urban project is Clara Vista redevelopment. This is a partnership by Hacienda CDC and Gorman and Company. It's a 108 unit property that was built in the early 60s and acquired by Hacienda, I think, in the mid 90s. There's a lot of needs on this property. And as Hacienda and its partners sat down and really looked at the total capital needs to really bring this project up to snuff and make it an asset to the community, they felt and concluded that it was better to redevelop the site entirely and build new buildings, and successfully made the case to us that that was a good use of resources. So they will be replacing the 108 units with 108 new units in 3 more dense buildings. The demographic data for this property, about 87% of the tenants identify as other African-American, Asian, or multiracial. About 78% of the tenants identify as Hispanic or Latino. We rate this project as furthering equity and racial justice. I think I skipped over that sentence with 2 Chrisman properties. We also rate them as furthering equity and racial justice. And the final property is another property in Portland. This is in inner Southeast Portland. It's a mixed-use building. We're not touching the commercial units with this funding. Obviously, we're only working on the housing. This is owned by Innovative Housing Incorporated. They bought the property in the 90s. It was built in 1911. Or no, I think actually they bought it in the early 2000s. This building has a lot of deferred maintenance issues, including the elevator, needs seismic upgrades according to Portland's requirements. There are other major capital needs, including the roof, plumbing, electrical, windows, and the HVAC system. They're adding air conditioning. The 88 units at the Clifford serve a mix of vulnerable populations supported by project-based rent assistance and wraparound services. 74 of the units are currently serve households under 30% AMI, and 45% of the units are currently designated as PSH units. Innovative Housing hopes to raise that number to 67% or 67 permanent supportive housing units after the rehab. 78% of the residents responded to the tenant survey as Black or African American, and 16%. I think that these totals don't match up quite with what's on the slide. About 18% Hispanic or Latino. About 58% of the tenants identified as living with a disability. So again, we rate this project as furthering equity and racial justice. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions people have. The motion is on page 27 when you're ready to consider that.
Questions or feedback from the council? Not, I'd like to entertain the motion on page 27 to approve these funding awards.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair Hall. Councilmember Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, great. We move on to permanent supportive housing rules approval.
Great, thank you so much. And so presenting these administrative rule updates is Dana Schultz. Thank you, Dana.
Hi, good morning, Chair Hall, council members, and Executive Director Bell. My name is Dana Schultz. I am the Program Manager for the Affordable Rental Housing's Permanent Supportive Housing, or PSH program. I'm here today because OHCS is establishing rules for the Permanent Supportive Housing program. The objective of the PSH program is to expand the state's supply of affordable housing designed to serve households who are experiencing chronic homelessness. The PSH program provides partners with development capital, comprehensive services funding, and project-based rental assistance. The proposed rules for the PSH program and the accompanying background information have been provided to you in your packet, beginning on page 42. And so per Oregon statute, rules are approved by the Housing Stability Council. Therefore, the Affordable Rental Housing Division of Oregon Housing and Community Services is requesting that the Housing Stability Council approve the OARs as presented for the Permanent Supportive Housing Program. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on these, and I ask that you consider the motion on page 42 of your packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? If not, I would like to entertain the motion on page 42, if somebody will make that motion to approve these administrative rules.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks. Can we have the roll call now, please?
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes, having trouble finding my button.
thank you. Councilmember Sandoval,
Yes.
thank you. Motion passes.
Great. Now, Lift Metro Allocation Project recommendation.
Absolutely. Last on ARH, but certainly not least, Becky Isom has some funding recommendations for Lift investments into Metro projects. Go ahead, Becky.
Good morning, Chair Hall, Executive Director Bell, and Council. For the record, I am Becky Isom, Senior Program Analyst in the Affordable Rental Housing section. And can you see my screen, my slides? Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure because it doesn't have the little red thing around it, so I didn't know. Okay, today I'm bringing before Council the final two funding recommendations from Metro, the regional governing body for Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties. As a reminder, in May of 2022, Council approved an allocation strategy to allow Metro to allocate LIFT funds alongside the Metro Housing Bond in order to reduce that pesky constraint on private activity bonds, or PAB. These two projects will bring a total of 231 new units of affordable housing to the Portland Metro region. The first one is Barber Apartments, which is located in Portland's southeast corridor, which is a community in danger of gentrification due to the planned future expansion of the Max Light Rail public transportation system. A significant Muslim community with Portland's largest mosque currently resides in this neighborhood. Barber Apartments is poised to serve as an anti-displacement function for current residents as the area becomes more desirable alongside the future light rail expansion. Innovative Housing, Inc. is working with immigrant and refugee community organization, Islamic Social Services of Oregon State, and the Somali American Council of Oregon and Black Parent Initiative to market the units to future residents. The second and last one is our El Monica Station. El Monica Station is a new construction project located right next to the El Monica Max Light Rail Station in Beaverton. By placing studio and 1-bedroom units right next to the larger 3-bedroom units, El Monica Station is designed to be supportive of multi-generational living. Reach DC has established a project advisory committee, or a PAC, with various community organizations, including Bienestar, Somali Empowerment Circle, Home Plate Youth Services, and Community Vision. The various PAC members will assist in marketing and lease-up efforts. I am happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I ask that you consider the motion on page 57 of your packet.
Do we have any questions from the council? I would entertain the motion on page 57, please.
So moved.
Thanks. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great. And if we could now have the roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Council.
Great. So this wraps up a very packed list of action items under affordable rental housing. Thanks to all the staff, thanks to the council for their engagement and feedback. And we are now going to take a 15-minute break. We'll recess the meeting. I'm showing 11:14 on my computer clock, so ask all council members to be back and ready to roll again at 11:29. Till then, we stand in recess. All right, council members and guests, we are at the time for resumption of the meeting. As soon as we get council back online, we will move forward. Okay, do we have everybody back?
Oh, the council members are still online, just not with video on.
Okay, then let's
Oh,
reconvene.
and Sammy Joe's back.
Oh, great. So we'll reconvene the meeting now, and I'm excited. We're gonna be considering a project right in my own backyard. So, disaster recovery and resilience. And is Assistant Director Flynn going to introduce this, or we'll go right to Lauren Dressen.
Hi, good morning, I suppose.
Good morning.
I think Nathan is going to pull up. Are you able to share, Nathan? Okay, awesome. We'll get that pulled up here. All right, can everybody see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Is that working?
That is working.
Okay.
All right, we are going to talk about Coast Vineyard Tiny Home Village project in Lincoln County, and Nathan will take us into the details, but just quick introduction. Chair Hall, Director Bell, and members of the council. For the record, my name is Lauren Dressen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Chief Recovery Officer with Disaster Recovery and Resilience section. And I will kick it over to Nathan to introduce himself as well.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hall, Director Bell, and members of the council. For the record, my name is Nathan Edding. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Housing Navigation Operations Lead for the DRR division.
All right, so before we get into kind of the project details, I just wanted to sort of lay our foundation for equity and racial justice considerations that is consistent across all of our state-funded projects. So we have, as just kind of a way of being, requirements in all of our grants and loan agreements around equity and racial justice, as well as specifically minority, women, and emerging small business practices. That language is in all of our grant and loan agreements, and we include reporting and performance tracking expectations on those, so specific metrics around those, and frequent check-ins with our partners about those, and it's included in our reporting templates. And so the other part of this is that we are requiring that all project owners are utilizing local partners. So for this, it's our WIRA subrecipients. In most cases, that's a community action agency that is running that program. And so those guidelines are really designed around identifying and addressing additional hurdles that disaster survivors are facing, who are people of color, have disabilities, are low and moderate income, and or face language barrier or citizenship barriers, or any combination of those things. And another piece of this that I really want to highlight why this is so important in what we're doing is continuity. We talk a lot about being trauma informed, and so having consistency in the case manager that a survivor's been working with from the moment, in some cases, that the disaster occurred to final recovery is very important for our projects. And so we've instituted this requirement in partnership with the WIRA subrecipient in that area for that continuity. And so there's a familiar face that's walking alongside survivors through that whole process. Next slide, please, Nate. So just a quick background. This is probably a familiar slide for many of you. Particularly, this is a project in Lincoln County that was affected by the Echo Mountain Fire in 2020. It destroyed 2,500 acres and 288 housing units and left more than 1,200 people homeless. And so with our upcoming federal CDBG DR funds, that's primarily focused on home ownership. And so we have taken that into account as we were selecting projects for our more flexible state funds, and have made some decisions to support rental housing, knowing that there was a split, particularly in Lincoln County, of homeowners and renters who were affected by this fire and lost their home. And so this is a rental project. And so we're really excited about this because it's giving people options to decide what makes sense for their family moving forward. And so I will, with that, I will turn it over to Nate to kind of get into the project details.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Lauren mentioned, this is a project in the Lincoln County, Lincoln City specifically. Part of the challenges we've faced and seen in Lincoln County are the availability of land. So this project is neat in that we are able to work with a couple of partners to piece together a small, slightly under an acre sized area. It's located adjacent to the Coast Vineyard Church in Lincoln City. The plan is to procure and place 12 tiny home rental units that will be available for wildfire survivors of low and moderate income. The partnerships that we've been able to identify for this project are our primary partner is Northwest Coastal Housing. They will be responsible for developing the land, procuring the units, setting the units, and then kicking off and managing the rental village from the inception point. The Coast Vineyard Church is one of our key partners. The land is adjacent to the church. Part of the land is owned by the church. They will be leasing it to Northwest Coastal, and they will be available as supporters long-term in the management of the site. Lincoln City is an important partner here, and we're excited that they are helping as much as they are. They provided 2 of the lots that make up this area. Those will be donated to Northwest Coastal for development and management. And then our community partner in Lincoln County is a community services consortium. They will be with the housing navigation once the units are placed and ready to be filled with residents. The Community Services Consortium will be helping to identify potential residents based on eligibility and wildfire preferences. We've been working with them for a while now with wildfire recovery, and we're excited to continue working with them on this project. The location here, I hope that's coming through clear. A rough sketch up of where this is located. The red box indicates the 3 parcels that are patched together, just under an acre. They lie just north of the Coast Vineyard Church there, approximately 300 feet or so from Highway 101. So it makes this a nice location for commuters. There's approximately just 2 miles from a number of grocery store options and about a 10-minute walk from a couple of bus lines. Also in the picture just south of the Coast Vineyard Church, there is the Lincoln City Food Pantry. So we find this to be a good location for these 12 rental units. The cost of the project to OHCS is coming roughly $1.62 million for the project. Broken out as roughly $500,000 for site improvements. The cost of the houses estimated at just over $1 million, and then there's a small buffer of about $100,000 for contingency. As mentioned with eligibility, we're looking for wildfire survivor preference. The aiming at a 60% or below AMI, and with some flexibility to extend that as needed. Again, working with our community action agency, the Community Services Consortium, for eligibility determinations to make sure that we're remaining consistent with our other state-funded wildfire projects and to ensure a trauma-informed approach.
And with that, if there are any questions, Nate or I would be happy to answer those.
No questions. I'd just like to comment that I absolutely love this project. You've got the partnership with the city, the church, excellent local nonprofit developer, and I really think the location couldn't be more ideal. Those of you who know Lincoln City know that it's a long stretched out community, the 20 miracle miles, if anybody's old enough to remember that slogan. But yeah, it's a great location for folks accessing vital needs. So I'm really happy to see this. Any other council comment, questions, feedback?
I have a question, Chair Hall. Oh, sorry, Javier.
Okay, Javier and then Sammy Joe.
Thank you, Chair Hall. I just wanted to echo your comment and especially really appreciate the proactive outreach and equity perspective that was brought out. I think that's great. There's some great partnerships and I just want to say jump on it.
Okay, Councilmember DeFontorum.
Thank you, Chair Hall. Yeah, I agree. This is a really great location for development. I'm kind of looking at it a little bit differently, though. I'm curious what type of information was gathered to determine that tiny homes would be utilized for people in the 60 to 80% AMI income bracket. I mean, maybe it's build it and they will show up. I don't know. I'm just curious if there was any type of outreach or study, or if we're just building conceptually. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember DeFontorum. Also, I like the Field of Dreams reference, I have to say. Yeah, I think, I mean, for us, we're kind of looking at, you know, a couple months ago came and got approval on the Depot Bay Townhome project. We've kind of been looking at a variety of different options to give people, and we're running all of those the eligibility checks through CSC. So kind of being able to give people a variety of options and pick what makes sense for them is part of some of our thinking, and talking with CSC as well to kind of, you know, who's left that has not been recovered, how large are these households, what's the income level, what are their situations, and trying to put together a variety of projects. Not looking at them individually, but looking at them kind of community-wide. We have some single family lots that we're developing as well. That was sort of our approach, is trying to give a variety of options for survivors to sort of choose what makes sense for their family out of this tragedy, essentially. I don't know if that answers your question, or if Nate, you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think you got it. It's one project in a out of a few in this general area, that with the hope of making as many options available to the remaining wildfire recovering families as is possible.
Thank you. That does answer my question. I know there's never a lack of people needing affordable housing, so I'm sure it will be welcomed in the community. Thank you very much.
Any other council input? If not, I'd like to entertain the motion on page 64 of the packet and also on your screen.
Moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Yay. All
I
right.
didn't hear my name in the roll call. This is Sammy Joe, but for the record, I would agree.
Sorry about that, Sammy Jo. I had you marked out. My apologies. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. On to
Thank you.
home ownership division now.
Good morning, Chair Hall. Kim Freeman, Assistant Director to Homeownership Programs. I use she, her pronouns. Good to see everyone this morning. I do have one Oregon Bond residential loan file for you to approve. It is a home located in Marion County in our beautiful capital here in Salem. The household member has identified as a white male, and the household consists of 4 people. And with that, I would seek your approval, which is on page 69.
Any council questions or feedback? Then I would like to entertain the motion on page 69.
So moved.
And a second, someone, please.
Second.
And a roll call now, please.
Thank you. Councilmember DeFontorum,
Yes.
Councilmember Farrell,
Yes.
Chair Hall,
Yes.
Councilmember Minna,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. And rolling right along. HAF update.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hall, council members, Director Bell. I'm going to share my screen. So please let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the HAF program today. My name is Ryan Vandenbrink. I'm the Assistant Director of Homeowner Assistance Programs at the agency. HAF, or the Homeowner Assistance Fund program, is the federally funded emergency response program that assists homeowners who were financially impacted by the COVID pandemic. Our program provides funds to cure defaults and delinquencies for a variety of housing costs, and for low-income homeowners, it provides some ongoing payments. Today, I'm here to update you about the pause in new applications that was in effect for the last few months, review our current eligibility criteria, or who can apply now, and then go over some HAF data and projections for the program. OHCS reopened the HAF program to new applications on March 8th. Although before that, we were accepting applications from homeowners in active foreclosure during the pause, in line with our program goal to prevent foreclosures. The purpose of our pause was to refocus and improve our systems and processes, as well as to complete outreach on over 800 incomplete applications that were in our pipeline before we inactivated them if they did not move forward, to get a better picture of our program funding projections. For brevity today, I'll just highlight 2 points from the pause. One, we added 3 additional translations to the homeowner application portal. So all 5 agency languages now have static language translation. And as before, Google Translate is available for the other languages. The second point, I would like to call out collaboration with our local partners to support homeowners that reapply for HAF. As I mentioned, some of our incomplete applications were inactivated, and other homeowners have been withdrawn for various reasons, like failure to provide documents. They can reapply once under our program rules, and to better support these homeowners during the pause, we worked with partners and determined that each of the partners will be available to assist homeowners with a reapplication. So when a homeowner is ready to reapply, they submit a request to OHCS. We create a new application for them. Much of the original application is ported over to the new application on their behalf by us. And then there's a direct handoff to a local partner to assist the homeowner to finish the application and manage the application process. We hope this will result in a high rate of success for homeowners who were unable to complete the process on their own previously. So who can apply now? HAF paused in what we were calling phase 3 of HAF's phased opening, which focused on the most at-risk homeowners, those less able to recover, and those traditionally underserved. These categories were identified by US Treasury and by OHCS specifically for the HAF program. And we reopened with the same focus. In addition, there is a HAF statutory requirement to target funds to households listed at the bottom of this slide. And so reopening first for these households will help us meet that statutory requirement. We're conducting outreach to these homeowners in a variety of ways. We have an independent HAF website. We have a HAF web page on the agency website. We provide information to 211. And we have a general mortgage relief website that the agency also operates. We enter into grant agreements with our partners to provide local outreach in their communities. We research public record foreclosure notices and send mailers to homeowners that go into foreclosure. And after our outreach coordinator recently retired, the division's community access coordinator has jumped in to help identify ongoing opportunities to reach culturally specific organizations, housing and foreclosure prevention fairs, members of tribes, and limited English households. So it is a collaboration to complete this outreach statewide, and I think that we're doing a good job. Going over the HAF data, this and the next slide provide information and highlights on the HAF program. The memo in your packet has additional information beyond what's on these two slides. And I'll focus today on the approved applications. There were 1,868 applications submitted for processing as of March 20th. These are the applications that met the minimum requirements as far as information provided in the application and documents uploaded to advance to processing. 757 of those were approved, and that's what the data on the left of the slide covers. 614 were in various stages of processing. 497 were withdrawn or denied by OHCS. That's just 27%. And as I mentioned earlier, homeowners who were withdrawn may reapply once more for the program, and they'll have additional contact and support from us and the partners. The figures on this slide are important because it shows the program is preventing homelessness for homeowners who are the most at risk of foreclosure and displacement, as identified in our HAF plan through data studies and engagement. We're helping those who are less able to recover through other options like mortgage service or workouts. In addition, there is another HAF statutory requirement that we provide 60% of our HAF assistance to low-income households. And to date, we are not only in compliance with that requirement, we are exceeding it with nearly 90% of our approved files falling into the low-income household category. Going over our projections, and this data is from March 27th, a week after most of the other data in this presentation. We projected that we had roughly $6 million remaining for future new applications. And to dive into that a little more, the projections on the date that we used were for an average award of $36,290. That figure continually changes and adjusts as more files are approved and those payments are scheduled. So based on the total payments scheduled for files that are approved, we adjust our average award and recalculate the projections. The projection that you see also assumes that all 500 files that were started after the pause will also receive this average award. As we do outreach and later inactivate applications that are incomplete and not move forward, the active reservations and projections will continue to fluctuate. So this is a figure that is a point in time, and we do go over this every week or two, so it does change. One thing that these slides don't cover is that homeowners in foreclosure remain our top priority. And we do our best to fast track those time-sensitive applications. We work closely with applicants, mortgage servicers, other housing entities, attorneys, our vendors, and any partner assisting an applicant with the goal of postponing foreclosure sale dates to allow for HAF to review and fund an application. When needed, the Division of Financial Regulation encourages a servicer to enroll in the program or provide a postponement. This collaboration and the foreclosure postponement and prevention that results from it is one of the program's greatest successes. It takes an extraordinary amount of effort from all of the HAF team and a collaboration with all of those involved. So in closing, I would like to acknowledge and praise our team and all of our partners with this work that they do. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or suggestions you may have for the program.
All right, council members, any feedback? Well, hearing none, we'll say thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. And now, last item on our very full agenda for today, presentation from the Housing Stabilization Division.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Hall, Housing Stability Council members, Executive Director Bell. For the record, my name is Caleb Yant. I am the Deputy Director of the agency, not the Director of Housing Stabilization. However, Jill Smith, the Director of Housing Stabilization, is unexpectedly not able to make the meeting today. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce a few of our energy services team members, Dan Elliott and Danielle Safford, who are going to be going through the Department of Energy, the state plan, kind of talk about some of the changes that will occur in administration of that plan and that program for the 2023 state plan. And I believe there is also a decision on top of the briefing in order to kind of take the requisite steps to move forward with action on that state plan. So Dan and Danielle, if you are ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Caleb, for that. Good morning, Chair Hall and council members. My name is Dan Elliott, and for the record, I am the lead senior policy and program analyst for the Energy Services Division. I've appeared before you before, and I'm happy to see you here today as we did a lot this morning. We're really caught up on some things. So I'll be as quick and as brief as possible. This is our annual application for our state DOE funding, and there are some things that we're going to go over and list. I've got a presentation, but I'm going to introduce to you to Danielle Safford. She is our new, she's been with us for 3 weeks, our new weatherization program manager for the state. Danielle has been part of the weatherization assistance program for over 15 years. She's served as our department's compliance monitor since 2020, as well as served as an auditor and an inspector in both the state of Vermont, as well as Oregon, weatherization assistance community action agencies. She is absolutely committed to upholding OHCS values and working towards continually bringing these programs forward. And Danielle's most recently served as our compliance officer with distinction. We are pleased to see her take this leadership role. She's 3 weeks in. She's here today. She's done some great work, but I just want to congratulate her, and I wanted to introduce her. You're going to see her face here a lot more often with these applications and state plans. So Danielle will be answering some questions as well for you today, as well as me. And I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to share my screen here real quick with everybody. So let me know if that cooperates. All right. I just wanted to also add addition to this. I assume everybody can see. And I just wanted to add this on here. One of the distinctions that Danielle Safford has, and I've had the privilege of being in this role, as well as serving with all the past and even hiring some of the past directors, including this one with back to 1985. And there's a distinct thing if you look at the names and the people who have held that role in this particular set of industry. Danielle is the first woman state manager in the state of Oregon for this program since its inception in 1985. And so that's a big deal. And quite frankly, just for the record, it's about damn time. So we are really happy and excited for Danielle, and we're excited for our team. Our community action agency partners and stakeholders are thrilled to have a recognized face and already a leader. And so I've done enough to speak about Danielle, and she's going to do great things, and we know she already has. So we're going to move forward to this next slide, and we're going to get into business of our state application plan. So one of the things is for our Oregon weatherization programs, we have several weatherization programs that we come to you on a regular basis and provide information and updates on. We'll be back next month with our Oregon multifamily energy program with you as well. Today, we're going to be covering that first one at the top, which is the application for our weatherization assistance program. We were here few 3 months ago, actually 4 months ago, with the BIL program, the U.S. DOE Weatherization Assistance Program, and that is being funded, and we're receiving money throughout this year to the tune of about $36 million. So we got a lot going on this one. This one is the application for the regular annual one that we do every year, and that's going to be for about $3 million. The aspects that we're wanting you to consider and look at, for expediency and for ease, most of the things from last year, from the regular applications that we annually do, are just provisional updates that we provide for membership, for production schedules, for things that are just updated based upon the funding source. But we do have 2 new things that we want to highlight and that I want to cover with you today to go over in detail. You can refer to your memo as well. I'm sure you've already taken a look at that and taken a look at those links that are in there. But one of those is the Justice 40 initiative. This is brand new. We introduced this and shared this with you when we went over the US DOE BIL, the bipartisan infrastructure law dollars. That's that $36 million. This is a new initiative. Well, they added it and are in continuance with the regular DOE application as well. And so I'm going to go over that one more time and share with you what we're doing with that initiative and how they're planning to move forward on that. And then I also want to cover in detail some things that I think you'll be excited to hear about what we're planning to do with workforce development as we get more funding and there's more needs. We are being encouraged to and being provided funds for the initiation of a workforce development. And we are going to be doing some very big things, and I'll share with that with you in a moment. So let's talk about Justice 40 initiative. This is the big cornerstone change that was initiated by the president. This is their initiative. It began in the bipartisan infrastructure law as a provision of that. The bottom line on this is that 40% of the overall benefits are to go to disadvantaged communities. They're referring to these as DACs. This is a broad approach. You will hear Justice 40 for many programs as that begins to expand as far as the types of work and the investments and the strategies that are being laid out in the federal agencies to direct investments toward these communities. There's a lot of math going on, a lot of research going on. This is not anything that's unfamiliar with our agency, as we've been doing it for a while. And we've also been asked by the Department of Energy, as well as other organizations at the federal level, to provide our data and our mapping and our research that we've already been doing in our goals that we've set for ourselves as a department and as a state in regards to serving BIPOC communities. So this is really exciting stuff to see that the feds are finally catching up, and they're giving us a precursor as to what they're planning to do. There's a lot of things to overcome, but the fact that this is being focused and will be measured and benchmarked, and it will be dashboarded for states. So we are one of those organizations and one of those funds that funding sources that will have to put this in place. And so we feel we're ahead of the curve on this one, and then some, and we've got this very well dialed in, and we've dialed it in a little bit more, and we're looking forward to this next year as far as Justice 40 initiative. So speaking of how to measure this, how are we going to tackle this with our state plan, being the new and the application under J40? This is what the Department of Energy has set up for us as far as the policy priority: decrease energy burden, environmental exposure and burdens, increase clean energy access. Well, a good part of this is that our programs are perfectly designed to provide for these types of things, and we already definitely focus on those groups. You can see in the memo I provided on table 2, that is our output as far as what we did last year in regards to the demographic breakdowns. For the Weatherization Assistance Program, DOE, they have specific populations that they target right now, which are the elderly, disabled, children with families with young children. And those are the primary groups that they want us to target. But this is fantastic, as they're really starting to understand from us exactly the groups and the communities that we want to be able to focus on. So we're really excited about this, and we hope the feds will be able to be more comfortable with flexing their influence and directing these types of investments in the future for the energy programs. So this is really great to see. This will not be easy to do. It will not be easy to measure, but it will be something that they're going to address and begin to collect data on, and we've got plenty for them. There is a tool that's in place that was developed by the president, and I've got a link on there. This is what it looks like when you get to it. This tool is called the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. This is an interactive map and uses data sets that are indicators of burdens in several different categories, from climate change, energy, health, housing, pollution. Transportation is buried in there in a layer, along with water, wastewater, and even workforce development. So the darker categories in there, and you can actually go into each one of those in this tool, will help you identify where these populations are. And it also dictates where they expect us to see reports coming from, where they want to see outreach from, and where they want to see this 40% of the total aggregate state being invested in, not just the weatherization assistance program, but any dollars that they have coming through that. So we had a couple tools. The Department of Energy had built their own tool, which was interesting considering this tool was already built and the president wanted us to use this. Also, to let you know that when they were building this particular tool, they asked our state to provide data because they had seen the research we had done with OSU in 2019 to develop our own tool to do just this and be able to map, prioritize, and qualify these things. So we felt really honored to do that, even so much so that they've asked us to, in future iterations, if we would like to use our map in the future. And so we're going to agree and move forward with working with this tool as it is recognized with our partners, Oregon Department of Energy and Oregon Health Authority. They're recognizing it with their programs. This will make it easy to collaborate on and to focus our state agency efforts, along with stakeholders being familiar with this tool. However, we have our own specific tool that we've developed that meets with these areas, but it also drives a little bit deeper. And you've seen that tool as well. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go back one more. This is our actual tool that we use for our program and our process. It drives deeper as it has more information, not just on race at the census tract and the energy burden, but it also has something called the energy usage intensity layer on there, which we take into consideration the actual building type and the energy use of that building. So that becomes to float up as well. So we begin to really target where we can select and where we need to outreach for the buildings that actually potentially need, because it's not just the household and the need for the energy burden, but our program's a little bit is different and distinct in that we're treating a building. Not necessarily a bill per se, but we're actually looking for buildings that we can actually reduce their energy usage in and improve them. So we have a tool here. We're really confident with the use of that, and we're going to be sharing it with and training on it with our agencies here next month with CAPO, Community Action Partnership of Oregon, at one of their trainings offerings here in May. We're going to be selectively instituting this as we move forward. And so we're really happy with being ahead of that and helping the agencies help us deliver this type of work in the communities that they're at, and help them really drive down and provide the marketing and outreach that they need to do to get these communities to come into our doors and get the assistance and ask for it. So we're really happy that this will really put those in sight for us. That's the long and short of it for the tool. And for what we're looking at and what we're moving forward with. We have a good baseline of the demographics in both Table 1 and Table 2 of what we did last year. We're hoping to drive and move further into those communities based upon their energy burdens as well. And that's going to take a lot of work. a lot of training, and a lot of effort and expansion with these additional dollars, including workforce development. And so when we turn to workforce development with training and technical assistance, we, with all of our agencies that we deliver throughout the state, there's 17 of them. We're also introducing training to tribes as well. We're going to go all in is what we're calling it. We're setting aside and being very deliberate about our investment in workforce development and training. And just on Tuesday, I have collected the keys to our new weatherization training center site, which will be located here in Salem. I'm putting this up here for y'all to see. This is on the corner of Pringle and Pringle Road and McGillcrest in Salem. This site is going to be we're actually going to house our weatherization assistance program in there with our staff. This is where our monitoring team will be, our training team, and our program managers will be, but we will also be sharing the site with Community Action Partnership. The Oregon Training Institute will be housed next to us, where we will begin instituting training for our contractors, for contractors interested in doing the work and qualifying and being certified to our work. As you can see in that top cavity, that top up above there, that is a manufactured home. We're going to be moving a manufactured home, probably a 10 by 50, into the building. That's the plan, so that we can train contractors as well as HVAC and specialty operators on what we do and how to do it. We are recognizing the need for that to go hand in hand, and we're very excited. I feel like we're about 10 years behind on this as far as the intentionality for the investment, but we're really excited. CAPO has also received, the Oregon Training Institute, they received a $1.4 million grant from the U.S. Department of Energy to train migrant workers to do weatherization installation work, from insulation to light rehab and work related to that, which will take place in this building along with the training. So we're excited, so excited with how this will expand and partner. We're also partnering with Oregon Department of Energy, who is also applying for, and I believe they've got a very good chance of getting a grant to train energy auditors. And well, we'll be partnering with them, and we'll be able to house those trainings here at this as well. So we'll be a very center for the workforce development and the support for the agencies moving forward. So that's it for what I have today and what we have today. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And what we're asking for is your review and your approval of the application and the plan going forward. And Danielle and I are open to questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any questions or feedback from the council? Well, hearing none, can we entertain the motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Please. Thank you. And a roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes.
Councilmember Farrell.
Yes.
Chair Hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Yes.
Great, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for more to come. We appreciate your time today.
All right. Thank you. So unless I've skipped over something, I believe we're at the end of our agenda.
That is correct, Chair Hall.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much to the public for their input and participation, for the council members for great engagement, staff for bringing forward many good and worthwhile things. And so I'll say happy April to everybody, and hopefully all these April showers are going to bring us May flowers. We'll find out in a month. See you then.